inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader.
Good morning, everyone. I, Rashmi Warrior,
And I, Abu Bakr Siddiq,
welcome you all to today's program, Leveling Up, Driving Business Growth, with the Bengaluru Chamber of Industry and Commerce. We are also delighted to welcome you all to St. Francis College, Koramangala.
let us now invoke God's blessing through a prayer song. May I request the choir team to lead us through the prayer song.
You are my strength when I am weak. You are the treasure that I seek. You are my all in all. Seeking you as a precious jewel. Love to give up, I'd be a fool. You are my all in all. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. 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 Worthy is your name. Worthy is your name.
Thank you, choir team.
To shine your brightest light is to be who you truly are. Now, I would request all our dignitaries and the management of St. Francis College to grace this occasion by lighting the lamp. As we call out the names, may I request all the dignitaries present to light the lamp jointly.
Reverend Brother Simon, Provincial and Director, St. Francis Institutions. Mr. Devesh Agarwal, President, BCIC and Managing Director of Jason's Technologies.
Reverend Brother Matthew, Vice Provincial and Financial Administrator, St. Francis Institutions. And a whole-time Director, Toyota Industries Engine India Limited.
Brother Peter, Assistant Director, St. Francis College. K.R. Shekhar, Vice President, BCIC and Partner, Deloitte Haskins and Cells.
Dr. Murli Mohan, BD, Chief of Pulmonology, Narayana Health. Ms. Samira Fernandez, Director of Strategy and Planning and the Dean of Academic Affairs, St. Francis College.
Dr. S. Devarajan, Senior Vice President, TVS Motors. Dr. Subbarao, Principal of St. Francis College.
Mr. Augustus Azria, HR Leader at IBM. B. Indushekhar, Vice President and General Manager, Volvo Group.
Dr. L. Ravirendran and CEO of Wealth Max Enterprises Management. Mr. Ramesh Saligrama, General Manager, Manufacturing, Bosch Limited.
Mr. Naresh Pagaria, CEO, Quality Foods. Mr. Bharat Shivappa, Chief Strategy and Development Officer, J. Sagar Associates.
Mr. Badrinath Enna, Singhvi Dev and Unni Chartered Accountants. Mr. Chetan Kumar, Assistant Editor, Times of India.
all the dignitaries on the dais to stand for a group photo.
Our college is on the forefront of promoting a holistic culture through partnerships, collaborations with industries right throughout its inception. Internships and engagements through seminars and conferences are some of the key initiatives that take priority here. Let us hear what our visionary leaders have to say. Now, let us watch a video what conveys the vision and mission of St. Francis College.
It was a dream of Francis Missionary Brothers to start an education for higher learning. Our ultimate aim was employability for all the students. Aiming at that employability, we have a tie-up with almost 170 companies. Soon after completing the first semester examination, we sent all our students in various companies for the exposure program. It was a work experience for our students, and I am very happy to see that our students did very well and the companies were happy about our students' performance. Almost 100 students got job offer letter. That's the aim for our institution, employability for all the youth.
There is a huge gap between the expectation of the industry and the offer made by the institution. So to narrow down the gap, we have several active centers, committees, and which carry on activities throughout the week. Our focus is to see that when the student go out of the institution, they do not carry only the marks list, marks card. Apart from that, our intention is to see that the students are accepted well in the job market.
It is our endeavor here at St. Francis College to unleash the potential of each and every student who walk into our college by exploring opportunities, keeping them industry ready through different exposures, giving them the freedom of thought, inspiring them to be thought leaders so that they can go out and make choices that they feel are good for themselves and the community. Our focus is finally and most importantly on broadening horizons. Horizons when our students reach out to the community, reach out in their careers, and most importantly, become leaders of tomorrow.
Now, I request Mr. Devesh Agarwal, the President of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce and the Managing Director of Jason's Technologies, to deliver the presidential address.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks. Sir, no, the Queen has not knighted me, so I'm not entitled to that title, you know. Honest to God, I haven't prepared. Kind of reminds me of cramming for the exams the night before, so I'm actually cramming for this speech while I'm talking to you. The Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce is 43 years old. It has over 775 members, which represent the gamut of industry across the state of Karnataka. Our members are primarily large and medium scale industry, but we are seeing a lot more entry of small scale industry and also startups. In fact, our co-chair of the 3I committee, or rather I take that back, ICT committee, that is IT, Communications and Technology Committee, Ms. Richa Sarna is here. She conducts an Excelathon specifically focused towards social innovation. And we are having right now ongoing a program called the BCIC Emerging Stars Award, which focuses on startups, mentoring, a whole load of cash prizes, recognition, etc. Our members, as I said, they represent the entire gamut of industry, manufacturing, automotive, aerospace, technology, pharma, electronics, of course, IT, financial services. Our current vice president, for instance, Mr. K.R. Sekhar, is with Deloitte. Our senior vice president, Mr. Parsuraman, heads Toyota engine divisions, and as you know, the engine is the heart of any car, and extremely technologically complicated piece of equipment to manufacture. At the chamber, our focus is always to deliver, not just to our members, but also in an effort, we have a committee called 3I, which is called the Industry Institute Interface. And in that, we specifically focus on interfacing with educational institutions and preparing students for what are the challenges coming ahead. What is it that we would like for you as a potential contributor to our member companies? These are the kinds of things that we take upon our chamber. You would have seen that we are now closely working with the government on the COVID-19 coronavirus. What we feel is more of a panic. We suggest to all our members, take precautions, but go about your daily work. Continue going to restaurants, continue making your products, continue selling, keep the economic wheels turning. I would like to thank St. Francis College for organizing this program today. Our co-chair of our member outreach program, Ms. Samira Fernandez, she has put in a lot of effort. We have with us Dr. B.V. Murli Mohan, who's going to talk to us specifically about the COVID-19 novel coronavirus. He's the head of pulmonology for Narayana Health. So you are going to hear it from the experts of what you should and should not do. We have huge gamut. I'm sorry they changed the slide, but you've got a huge gamut of industry leaders in front of you who are going to talk to you all kinds of various topics. And of course, they'll be happy to interact with you once the program is complete. Once again, I want to thank everybody for taking time, for coming here this morning, and I'm quite sure we will have a wonderful morning. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. As a token of appreciation, I request Reverend Brother Simon to hand over a memento. Based on the prevailing scenario affecting the world, we have with us an eminent personality who will address the gathering on the demystifying COVID-19. A warm round of applause to Dr. Murli Mohan, Chief Pulmonologist, Narayana Health. Before we invite him to the dais, may I take a moment to introduce Dr. Murli Mohan. Dr. Murli Mohan is currently working as a senior consultant, pulmonologist, and director of the Department of Internal Medicine, Pulmonology at Narayana Hridayalaya, Bengaluru. Dr. Murli Mohan was awarded the FRCP by the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow in 2015 with the various initiatives he had taken. Dr. B.V. Murli Mohan has been a versatile personality in the field of medicine. His special interest has always been in the areas of obstructive airways disease, lung disease, and pulmonary hypertension. He has also presented papers at various national and international conferences and in international journals. Now, I request Dr. P.V. Murli Mohan to address the gathering on the demystifying coronavirus.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you both to the BCIC and to St. Francis for inviting me here. The first impression when I come into an institution like this is it takes me back to my school days, because it's a similar kind of institution I studied in. And one of the things that strikes one is there is purpose, there is vision. That vision is translated with that purpose. You see order, you see discipline, and you see love. So I think these are the important aspects we are going to need in the next couple of months to tackle this fairly frightening problem that we are faced with. That's COVID-19, or the coronavirus of 2019 disease. Less than a week ago, when I spoke to Mr. Devesh Agarwal first, I was very sanguine about the whole thing, and I said, we don't need to worry too much about this condition. It's not going to hit us too hard. We've had similar scares with the H1N1 and earlier with SARS and with the MERS. But now I realize that it's not quite as simple as those conditions were. Incidentally, we're still faced with a greater problem with H1N1. And a lot of what I'm going to tell you today applies as much to H1N1. It's important that the cleanliness and the order that you see in this campus is translated across the country if we expect to find this particular condition. So Donald Rumsfeld, the former Secretary of Defense, made that statement. Can I have the next slide? He said there are known knowns. These are the things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. These are the things that we know that we don't know. But then he talked about the unknowns, and we don't even know that we don't know about them. And I think in the beginning of any condition like this, whether you're talking about it being an epidemic or a pandemic, there are a lot of these unknown unknowns. And while people generally laugh at Donald Rumsfeld for saying this, I think this is one of the rare occasions where he actually made some sense. Can I have the next slide, please? So the coronavirus belongs to a family of viruses. It's not just one virus. There are several viruses, and if we swab the throat of everyone here, we'll probably get 1 or 2 species of coronavirus, because it's responsible for the ordinary cold. And we've all had colds. There's no person in the world who's not had a common cold. And that's coronavirus too. But this particular avatar of the virus seems to be a little more worrying. And if you look at the coronavirus, it's so called because it's got this spike of proteins all around, which are like a crown around the virus, and that's what corona means, crown. And the crown is where the virus attaches onto us and then injects its RNA, the nucleic acid, into the cell and starts doing the damage. So it starts with that crown, and we shouldn't ignore that aspect of this virus. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, one of the peculiar things about viruses, and especially RNA viruses, is they mutate very frequently. The genetic structure changes. So before the body can mount a good response to it, the virus is often changed in some ways. And that's the difficulty of why we never become resistant. We never develop immunity against the coronavirus. And that's why we'll always get colds. Fortunately, some of these other viruses, the non-cold coronaviruses, it looks like we can develop immunity, especially against those protein spikes that form the corona that I mentioned earlier. So there's hope. It's not as bad as the common cold in terms of the immunity we can develop against it. And as I said earlier, it's been circulating for decades among humans, and they cause a wide range of diseases. Can I have the next slide? No, this one. Go back, please. Yeah. So at the left you have, as I said, the common cold, which is very, very widespread, ubiquitous, every part of the world. And at the extreme right you have MERS, now COVID-19, and the SARS virus. And this all just belongs to the same spectrum of viruses. So who can get infected? Virtually anybody, whether you're young or old, man or woman, wherever you are in the world, you can get infected with the coronavirus. And everybody, as I said, already has some coronaviruses. And this virus is going to form that same kind of pattern, that it's going to spread across the world, which is why the WHO has already called it a pandemic. Slide, please. The next slide. So these are the symptoms that you see. You probably can't see the slide, it's a little too small, but it tells you what happens in the early stages and the late stages. So on the right hand, the slide tells you that in the early stage you have fever, and unlike the flu, this is usually a fairly low grade of fever. You just feel a little chilly, you feel a little feverish. It's not a very high fever, it's not the 102s, 103s in the early stage. And then accompanying this, you either have respiratory symptoms because it enters through the nose or mouth and gets into the lungs. And from the mouth, it can also work its way into the stomach and intestines. So you get either lung symptoms, upper respiratory symptoms, that is the nose and throat, or it can go down into your gut and give you diarrhea. So the common symptoms are cough, slight runny nose, sore throat maybe, some shortness of breath. Since the virus spreads to the body, it affects the muscles and causes a lot of muscle aches and pains. It can also cause headache. And of course, if it enters the stomach and intestines, it can cause some vomiting and diarrhea. But those are the early symptoms. As you move into the second week and a little later, that's when some people, not all of them, a few people develop pneumonia and bronchitis. And that's what causes the breathlessness. It causes cough. People start to cough up a little sputum, which was not there in the earlier stages, and then they break out into this breathlessness, pneumonia, and that drops their oxygen and causes the problems. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, the next slide. Yeah, so you see there that it's not one of the most contagious diseases. So that little box that you have doesn't project very well in the light, but the COVID-19 is written next to it, which you can see clearly, is neither the most contagious of all viruses, because the average number of people infected by one sick person is not very high. It's about 1.5 to 3.5, say roughly 2 to 2.5. Much less than many of the other infections that we come across. So it's an infection, it spreads from one person to the other, but is not the most infective of all viruses. The next slide on the right side shows you that the majority of infections are mild. So you take the virus, let's not get too scared of it. More than 80%, more than 4 in 5 infections tend to be mild. And a lot of patients actually don't even have symptoms. Okay, so that's something that you need to keep in mind. Something good about it, that it doesn't affect people too much. The only problem is people with mild symptoms think, oh, I don't have much of a problem, this can't be corona. Go out into the community and spread it when they have symptoms. Okay, so there's a little bit of good and a little bad about a very, very mild infection. A small, keep that slide on, please. Yeah. The small numbers, less than 1 in 6 tend to have a more severe infection, and less than 1 in 20 have a critical infection. And when I'm talking about severe, these are the people who recover, may need to go into hospital. The ones who have a mild disease need not go into a hospital, they can be treated as an outpatient at home. It's only the critical ones who need to go to the ICU, and that, as I'll come to later, is not something that affects the population sitting here, except maybe those in the front row. The next slide, please. The majority of people recover. More than half the people have already recovered. It's less than 2 months or 2.5 months, and yet most people have already recovered from this infection. So let's not get too frightened about this infection. And the right side slide, you see that those aged 60 are most at risk. Okay, younger people, as in this audience, as I mentioned, are not likely to have much of an infection. In fact, the death rate among people who are less than 50 years old is less than 1%. It's in the range of 0.02 to 0.4%. In the 50 pluses, it rises slightly. In the 60 pluses, it rises even more. And it's really only the 80 pluses who have a death rate of more than 1 in 5. Okay, or around 1 in 5. So let's not get too worried. Most people who contract the infection are going to have a mild or a moderate infection. Very few are going to have a severe infection, and very, very, very few are actually going to die of the infection. On the right side, and can you move the next slide, please? Yeah. So among the risk factors are those who already have another disease. So the person has a heart disease, has heart failure, has bad lungs, maybe because of smoking, has bad liver or kidney disease. These are the people who are more susceptible. People who are otherwise healthy, and I think that applies to the vast majority of this audience, are not going to have a very serious problem. And this is very unlike H1N1, where young people are often affected, and the most severe disease we saw was mostly in the people who are in their late teens, early 20s, in fact, the demographic of this audience. And again, I'll highlight to you the precautions that I'm going to tell you about you need to take for coronavirus are exactly the same that you need to take for H1N1, and that is something you really need to worry a little more about. But there are some good things about that which I'll come back to again later. The next slide, please. So Mr. Prithvi was asking me about this myth that's floating around, showing that most of the cities that were affected early are those that lie in that belt about 40 degrees north latitude. It doesn't affect the 40 degrees south latitude, which has a similar temperature. And you can see that the yellow band is where most of the infections lie. However, can I have the next slide, please? Most people use this, the next slide, please, to spreading the myth that COVID-19 will die out in summer and it will not reach warm countries like India. They said Bangalore is already hot, Chennai is even hotter, it's not going to affect us. Let's not accept that. This is data from the WHO, which actually says it is being transmitted in hot and humid climates. Let's not think that we're going to be immune and relax too much and not take precautions. The next slide. Now, this you can't see very clearly, but it just shows how quickly the COVID virus has spread. You know, we're talking about beginning there is from January 21st. Here we are on March 12th, and we already have 125,000 cases all over the world. Not India, this is worldwide data. But that's the worry, that it has spread rapidly, and when any virus spreads very rapidly through the community, it can spread because people have no immunity against it, and all of us who lack immunity are susceptible to it. Not that we're going to get it, we are going to be susceptible to it. Okay, so this is the problem with the rapidly spreading virus. So one of the strategies that governments are going to use is to try and slow down the spread, and I'll come back to this later. Okay, how does it compare with seasonal flu? I've been telling you that seasonal flu is a greater problem. Can I have the next slide? Next slide, please. Yeah, so when you compare it with seasonal flu, which is the data on the left, and those are the different groups, different ages, you'll find that COVID-19 affects a lot more people. Okay, so that, you know, if you look at the 60-plus-year-olds, more than 4% are affected, much less than those who died with seasonal influenza. But seasonal influenza affects a lot more people. In fact, my infectious diseases colleague yesterday was, you know, trying to highlight to management that every year, God knows how long, there have been at least 20,000 deaths in the United States alone due to seasonal influenza. We are nowhere near that number with the coronavirus. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so why is there breathing difficulty? It's because the lungs are affected. The lungs get flooded with fluid which turns solid, and it really becomes difficult to breathe. Oxygen doesn't get into the blood, and the person is panting for breath. And this is often the first sign that things are turning bad. It's gone beyond a mild infection, and this is the time to start, you know, some kind of supportive treatment and maybe get the person into hospital. Until that point, there really is no need to go into a hospital and risk spreading the infection to others. The next slide, please. So having learned all this, what should one do? And this is really the question I think all of us are interested in. What do you do? So the more things change, can I have the next slide? The more things change, the more they remain the same, and that's what that French sentence says. And on the left side, you have a plague doctor from the 16th, 17th century. This is what they wore during the plagues, which wiped out about a third of the countries or cities that they affected. London's population was reduced to almost 1/3. Many other countries, cities, I don't know how many of you know, but in Bangalore there's a road called Plague Road. This is from the late 19th century when plague affected Bangalore, and to give people work, they built that road and had the plague asylum there. Okay, so plague is something that has always been with humankind. And the
modern suits that we use are very similar to what the plague doctors used to use to guard themselves against it. And most people do not need this treatment. This is only for the doctors who are looking after hundreds of plague cases, and these are only for those who look after patients in the ICU, not even for me when I'm sitting in the outpatient. The next slide, please. So one of the things I was very happy to see when I walked in is nobody greeted me with a handshake, everybody greeted me with a namaste. Brother Simon did the same when we walked into the room. So that's something we need to go back to. We need to follow the namaste culture, because the fastest way we can spread the virus is by touching your nose or mouth, shaking hands with another person when you have the infection. But if the other person has the infection, you touch his hands. The virus is a very sticky virus, thanks to those spikes on the virus that we saw, which form the corona. And that gets transferred onto your skin, sticks to your skin through those spikes, and makes its way into your body. So avoid touching other people as much as possible. Avoid touching surfaces like this. It's already been contaminated this morning by at least 5 other people. Okay, if even one of them had had the virus, then all of us are at risk of picking it up. And now if I touch my face, I'm going to get the infection. I see about 30 or 40 patients in the day, I'm at risk of giving it to them. So avoid touching surfaces unnecessarily, and certainly don't touch your face after touching any other surface. Practice hand hygiene at all times, and I'll come back to this. Your hands are the main thing we touch other surfaces, touch our faces. We are a very manual species, so the hands must be kept clean at all times, washing multiple times and using a hand sanitizer multiple times. And again, I was impressed. When I came in, I was offered a hand sanitizer. Avoid close contact with anybody showing symptoms of respiratory disease. So there's no need to avoid close contact. Be friends, go out with people who have perfectly good health. But when a person starts to show signs, even of a common cold, you don't know what it is, that person should avoid the company of others, and you should avoid the company of that person, providing all care at a slight distance. Wear a mask only if you have respiratory symptoms. It does not help you to wear a mask at all times. Maintain safe food practices, that is, eat well cooked food which has been prepared hygienically. Avoid travel to farms, live animal markets, or where animals are slaughtered. Animals do not give it to humans. Now all the transmission is human to human, so let's not worry too much. Do not think that it's transmitted by the Chinese only. It has nothing to do with the Chinese any longer. Let's not discriminate against anyone. Next slide, please. So those are the general precautions you need to take. Increasingly, we're talking about social distancing, which is maintain at least 2-arm distance from others, especially when they have the infection. And it's thought that this is enough because the virus travels in droplets, it cannot travel individually. And these droplets, when a person coughs or sneezes, there's a huge cloud of viruses that comes out, but they cannot travel. These droplets cannot travel more than 6 feet. So if you can maintain a distance of 6 feet from anybody who's coughing or sneezing, or even has a fever, I think that's a very, very good practice. Maintain a distance of optimally 6 feet, I said. How do you measure 6 feet? 1 arm's length is roughly 2 feet. So you can measure 2 to 3 arms length from another person. And generally that will provide enough safety, provided you don't go sit in the same place and touch his arm, the arms of his armchair after he's been sitting in it. Okay, so surfaces and human beings and the cough can all spread the infection. The next slide, please. And we really need to learn how to queue in India. On the top you have a queue in the UK, and at the bottom you have what passes for a queue in India. And I was recently in Tirupati and people were pushing into me, wondering why I was keeping a 3-foot distance from the person in front. I was paunched throughout, and the man's paunch kept pushing me throughout the queue till I reached the main sanctum sanctorum. So queuing is something we need, and the queuing is with a 3-foot distance. I learned this the hard way in the UK when I went to a post office, and I saw a huge crowd of people outside. And like this was my first day in the UK, I walked into the post office, wondering why people are standing outside, and I saw a queue inside. Fortunately, my training in St. Joseph's taught me that I need to get out and join the end of the queue. And this was winter, so we were standing outside in the bitter cold, everybody with their hands like that shivering, but they maintained the 3 distance personal space, save each personal space. So it's very important that we try and follow this. Please queue with a 3-foot distance at least between one person and the other, and enforce queues in India. Next slide, please. As I was saying, wash your hands frequently. Wash with soap and water. Nothing is as good as soap and water. Obviously, it will turn your hands very dry, so you can use a lotion. And practically all hand sanitizers are alcohol-based. Mr. Devesh Agarwal very impressively gave me the contents of the sanitizer, which I can't recall. I only know it contains 2 types of alcohol and reaches a net concentration of 70%. And that's what you need to use. You need to use something which at least is 70% alcohol, and it works best when it's allowed to dry. And don't wipe it off. Allow the sanitizer to dry after you've used it. They all contain a little bit of lanolin, so the skin doesn't get chapped and dry, because cracked skin allows viruses to enter. Okay, so just hand washing is not enough. Also use a hand sanitizer. May I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so it's a very nice comic that the Indian government, which actually is doing some pretty impressive work of late on how to wash your hands. And I'm going to take you through it because I think it is very useful. Can I have the next slide? Yeah, so in detail, it starts left top with water and soap. That's all you need. You don't need anything more aggressive. Please don't use bleach and destroy your skin. What you do is put your soap and water, then wash palm to palm. Wash between the fingers, including the back of the fingers and the wet spaces. Focus on the thumbs, rubbing like that, because that often gets neglected. Wash the back of the hands and then rub the back of the hands together. Focus on the wrist, because things spread from the wrist to the rest of the hand. And finally, either you allow it to dry off or you wipe it with a clean towel. And this whole act you can do once or twice, but it must be washed for at least 20 seconds. How do you time 20 seconds? You can do it the traditional way, which is 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, till you reach 20, 1,000. Or you can sing 2 happy birthdays. The happy birthday song lasts 10 seconds. So 2 happy birthdays, so everybody has a happy birthday this year, the next year, and the year after that. Okay, so this is the hand washing part. Next slide, please. The virus can sit on surfaces 6 to 12 hours, maybe even longer. In the appropriate circumstances, even a couple of days. So we need to clean and disinfect frequently touched items and surfaces. You can use a regular household spray. You can use a sanitary wipe, a hand sanitation wipe. You know, the alcohol-based soft wipes that you get. And avoid touching your hands, with your hands, your eyes, nose or mouth with unwashed hands. Before you touch your face, and it's so easy unwittingly to touch your face. This is a nice video, I'm sure all of you saw it on WhatsApp, with this lady who's announcing, please do not touch your hands, with your hands, your face and nose. Then before turning the page, licks her fingers and turns the page. Worst possible thing you could do. Okay, so please take precautions. What I've started to do is try and hold my fingers together so I don't accidentally scratch my face. Before I can unloosen my hands and touch my face, I have to consciously unlink my fingers. So that I find fairly useful. Next slide, please. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Take care of your loved ones even if they are sick, but take appropriate precautions and avoid close contact as much as possible. And if you're sick, please stay home. That's very, very important. This is how infections spread, through people who are infected and give the infection to others. The next slide, please. Okay, cough etiquette, again, something we don't do in India. Everybody just coughs loudly. Throughout Tirupati, I was coughed on by many people. I guess I was the coffee, and it's not very pleasant to be coughed on by about 30 or 40 people. Fortunately, we didn't have the problem then. So cover your mouth and nose when you cough or sneeze. And how do you cough or sneeze? You can use a tissue, but after you sneeze or cough into it, don't put it back in your pocket, because that's the surest way of transferring it to your hand. Transferring the virus to your pocket, and the next time your hand goes into your pocket or your bag, you're going to pick up the infection and transfer it to somebody else or to your mouth or to a surface. So immediately after that, throw the tissue into a covered trash bin. At the Narayana Langford town, we've decided to have pedal bins with some Dettol at the base and we can dispose of this. Dettol, interestingly, as they've told you on the bottle, kills the coronavirus. Okay, but that's with the appropriate concentration. Throw the tissue into a covered trash bin. But perhaps a much better way to do it is to cough into your hand like this. So you go, okay, or sneeze into your hand. And one of the reasons I didn't wear a coat today is I can wash the shirt when I go home. I can't wash a coat that easily. Okay, so I think one of the good things to do for all the gentlemen sitting in front is start avoiding wearing blazers and coats and start using your shirt sleeve to cough into, and the same for the ladies too. Because your clothes, especially your clothes, shirts, kurtas, we wash every day. We do not wash blazers and coats at all. So try and avoid using that, and coughing to the hand is probably the tightest seal and avoids, spreading the infection to others. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the nightmare. I don't know if you've taken something, play that, just click on it and play it. This is the scene we very often see in India. So this was described as the world's shortest horror film. That's the problem. Okay, so do not spit. The virus is adequately killed when you swallow it, when you have good acid in your stomach, and you can't spread it to yourself, you already have it. So please do not spit outside. Next slide, please. Yeah. Self-quarantine, it may take up to 14 days to actually develop symptoms. It can be as little as 2 days, it can be as long as 14 days. So if you've been exposed definitely to the virus, stay at home for 14 days. There's no shorter period and there are no shortcuts. You can't say I'm just going to go out and spend some time with friends anyway, I don't have symptoms. If you've definitely been exposed to a person who's been diagnosed to have COVID-19 infection, please quarantine yourself. China, it was enforced with great diligence, with great strictness, and very, very obtrusively. They actually jailed people, and the reports that some people who tried to leave their homes were arrested and even shot. Italy did not do it. The day after the Italian government announced lockdown, the streets of Milan were full of people shopping, enjoying themselves, drinking, dancing. And that's why Italy has the fastest growing rate of COVID-19. This is a disease that's controllable as long as we are disciplined about it. Okay, stay informed, do not panic, get your information not from the WhatsApp University, but get it from official organizations. Official organizations, the Ministry of Family Health, Health and Family Welfare of India, the Government of India, and even the state, the CDC, and the WHO. These give you authentic information. Don't be tempted to panic by getting information from somebody who's mean, who doesn't understand what he's doing. It took me 15 years to become a pulmonologist, and subsequently I have another 25 years. So I'm talking from a world of experience that does not come overnight by somebody who decides to key something into his phone. Next slide, please. When should you seek medical help? Don't go to hospital. That's where you're going to get infections. Don't go to your doctor unnecessarily. If something can wait, postpone it. I'm not saying avoid something which is dangerous, but don't go to just have. Every day I get people saying, "Sumne checkup bande." You don't need checkups at this point in time. Don't go to the hospital unnecessarily. Leave that space for people who are really sick, and don't give them infections. Don't pick up infections from them. So if you have symptoms, stay at home, use a mask, avoid close contact with others. If you have a troublesome cough, seek medical help. And of course, if you're short of breath, immediately seek medical help. Shortness of breath is a bad symptom. And where should you go? Currently, the place to go to is either the Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Chest Diseases down the road, behind MHANS, or go to the Bangalore Medical College Research Institute, which is near City Market. And those are the only two places which have testing facilities. There's a WhatsApp message doing the rounds that Narayana Health has the testing facilities. We don't. At most, we can collect the sample and send it to one of these two places. It's much better to go directly there because we don't have the testing kits and we've not been given the testing kits yet. Next slide, please. Face masks were actually designed to help the surgeon not transmit his infection to the patient. When you open up the abdomen is a nice sterile place. You open up the chest by and large is a sterile place. Doctors don't get infections, surgeons don't get infections from patients except very, very rarely, not unless they cut themselves. So the mask is to prevent me from breathing into the patient's chest or abdomen when it's open. Okay, not the other way around. So don't use it to stop yourself getting infection. But when you have an infection, please use it to prevent yourself from giving it to others. 3-ply surgical masks are enough. There's a shortage of all kinds of masks. We are having to stitch cloth masks, which I last saw when I was an intern about 35 years ago. Okay, so don't please buy up masks unnecessarily. It doesn't help you and it deprives people who have the infection of getting it. N95 masks are only needed by doctors, and that too when they're performing a special procedure which is going to cause what is called aerosolization, where the virus rises into the air. And do not use up masks unnecessarily. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so this is from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, it says, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, just to tell you that persons having no symptoms are not to use masks. And I'm very happy to see nobody here is using a mask, it's unnecessary. Next slide, please. In such situation, the advice that I gave you earlier, wash hands frequently, especially if they're dirty or soiled, don't just use a hand sanitizer. Wash and then use a sanitizer. You know, cough into your flexed elbow or into a tissue which you dispose of. Refrain from touching a hand to your face. Stay ambulatory, monitor your body temperature. These are all you need to do. And remember, the body temperature is a pretty useless thing because it's a very mild rise in temperature. Next slide, please. When and who should use a medical mask? Apart from a healthcare worker, only when a person develops cough or fever, or somebody who's caring very closely with somebody who needs that help and who has cough or fever. Okay, that in summary is what that says. And for all these people, a triple layer mask is enough. You don't need an N95 mask. Next slide, please. How do you wear a mask? If you ever have to wear a mask, there's this particular way of doing it. I'm not going to teach you now. This is available on the net. It's a particular procedure. As far as possible, do not touch the outside of the mask when you're disposing it. Do not touch the inside of the mask before putting it on. Wash your hands before putting it on. Wash your hands before taking it off. Next slide, please. And dispose of it very quickly. Some don't, and I'm coming to the last few slides and then a few messages for our industry leaders here. There is no vaccine. You're hearing a lot of nonsense about Israel having made a vaccine. If they have and they started 6 months ago, 1 year ago, then there may be some way on the way to developing a vaccine. Vaccines don't develop overnight. They have to go through heavy testing, make sure they are safe and effective. Do not post messages. It's very, very important because it's a temptation to quickly forward a message. Do not post messages that increase the panic. Forward only messages that come from WHO, CDC, or Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Do not forward messages from anywhere else. Next slide, please. Why is it such a panic? Because look at the number of references in social media to COVID-19, 1.1 billion forwards. On the other hand, something like SARS, 15 to 20 years ago was only 56 million, which is why we never panicked about SARS. We are panicking about COVID only because of the forwards on social media. Don't add to the panic. Next slide, please. How big a problem is it? Look at the number of disease deaths per day worldwide. Tuberculosis, leading, 3014. How many people have forwarded even one message on tuberculosis? COVID-19 down there, 56. That's all, deaths per day. Okay, so we are panicking unnecessarily about things that we shouldn't panic about and not bothering about things that we really should be caring about. Hepatitis B. How many people here have got a hepatitis B shot in their childhood? Very few. Okay, that's the second largest infective killer. These are not all causing death, these are infective causing death, preventable causing death. Next slide, please. And as I said, don't go around buying up all the masks, preventive medicines, and hand sanitizers in sight. They will be available if you allow time for them to be manufactured. That's again a message to the business community. Let's start manufacturing most of the things where there is a felt need. Next slide, please. So somebody posted this interesting message. This is one of the few messages I thought worth forwarding to the people who bought 27 bottles of soap, leaving none on the shop shelves for others. You do realize that to stop getting coronavirus, you need other people to wash their hands too. Okay, so we all are in this together. We should look after each other, not just ourselves. There's no way you can protect yourself if others are not safe. Next slide. What about the companies? There's some fairly frightening statistics out there. This is from an American Hospitals Association webinar that happened recently. So they're expecting the United States, by the time this thing plays out, to have 480,000 deaths, close to 500,000 deaths. Given our population, we'll have a lot more. Okay? So let's be prepared for it. The community epidemic wave took about 2 months. That's what we're expecting. The number of cases requiring ventilatory support is about 1% of these. We don't have enough ventilators. We don't have enough ICUs. We need to gear up. And I think industry should hold hands with government, figuratively, not actually holding hands. We don't want people to hold hands now. Is to help government set up these places, because that protects you, it protects your business, it protects the economy of the country. Next slide, please. And this very clever man, I don't like him, he's a creep, but he said, never let a good crisis go to waste. We're in the middle of a crisis, let's turn it to our advantage. What can we do? Next slide, please. These are what is projected in each country. And I'll come to the next slide. Notice UK is down there close to the bottom of these European countries, which all have excellent healthcare services. Next slide. So this is the timeline of events. And I just want to point you to the red triangle. That's when China introduced a lockdown. And immediately after that, true new cases started to fall. They subsequently started testing more and picked up more cases, the orange bars. The green bars show you the true new cases stopped. Can we enforce a lockdown in India? We can't. Okay, China is different from India. Our discipline is different. Our political system, thank God, is different. We cannot enforce a lockdown, and I don't think we should. We cannot enforce lockdowns here. So what can we do? Next slide. So these are the things that we can do in industry. Work from home as much as possible. Have smaller groups of people in the hospital, then transmission from one person to the other becomes less. At the workplace, try and distance. I've requested our people in our Langford Town clinic to space apart the waiting areas. People are not sitting more than a meter closer than necessary. Provide hand sanitizers at the entrance to the building and at various spots, and educate people to use them. You educate people about this condition and work with the government and health authorities. Otherwise, they'll be overwhelmed soon. I'm hearing horror stories from our fellow pulmonologist friends in Italy that they're overwhelmed, they're neglecting old people, and they're focusing all their efforts on those who can be saved, who don't have any problems. So when an elderly person with a heart condition comes into the ER, they're not even looked at. They said, go home, we can't do anything for you. Ventilators are reserved for people who can be saved. So it's very, very important that we all come together to fight this. Next slide, please. So this is a term that the British are using, and I think they've accepted that yes, it's going to come, we're going to face it. How best do we face it? That line that you see, that horizontal dashed line, is the capacity of the healthcare system. If an infection rapidly spreads, it's going to overwhelm the system until the infection dies out. Okay, and that's what's happening in Italy. This has had a huge surge in cases. The next slide, Britain is trying to flatten this curve. So if we can slow down transmission by the methods that I said, social distancing, washing hands, no vaccine around, then we can at least slow down the rate at which it spreads, and we'll always have adequate healthcare facilities to to take hold of this condition and to keep it under manageable proportions. Next slide. Okay, I'm not going to go into this because it's taken plenty of time, but this is a story about a farmer who shared his best seed corn with his neighbors, and he was scolded and said, you're giving them the best corn. He said, unless they have the best corn, their pollen will come into my field and make my corn worse. So this is just a way of saying the last thing. The fact is, none of us truly wins until all of us win. And that's something we need to keep for the rest of this epidemic or pandemic, and it's something we probably need to keep for the rest of our lives. This habit of looking after each other, and all of us do well with this. The next slide, please. So, thank you very much for this very patient listening, and let's beat this virus together.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the audience if they have any questions for Dr. Murli regarding COVID-19?
Okay, so that's the term I did not use. I think it's single child in the country twice a year for the last couple of decades, polio virus. This is a live polio virus. So the baby gets the very, very low level of infection. It's not truly infection, doesn't produce problems. It spreads from the baby's feces. It spreads, the baby actually poops it out. It spreads in the community because we have not very clean water supply system. And other children who actually didn't receive the virus, and adults, get again very, very low level of this virus, which gives them immunity. So there's an immunity across the herd of animals of human beings. And that's what we're hoping to achieve. Because once it reaches a certain level, herd immunity kicks in and the virus stops spreading. We'll still get isolated cases in those who are immunosuppressed, who, for example, have had a transplant, have bad blood cancers or other diseases. People with diabetes, for example, have a lower level of immunity because of the disease. So they may still get the infection. But when you can bring it down to a small, manageable number, the virus tends to die out and doesn't spread easily at all. Currently, the problem is none of us have immunity. When one person gets it, it can spread to 10 others or 15 others. Okay, so we're trying to raise the level of herd immunity. And that's the British government strategy, but I think it's a very, very sensible strategy. The Americans are not following it. Surprise, surprise, Trump is in charge. But the strategy that the Chinese followed is not applicable in any other country other than North Korea. And the great worry, and I think the British are sensible about saying this, is if we lock down, nobody gets immunity, and then the virus is going to stage a comeback and we're going to have to go through this all over again. So it's actually sensible to let a low level of infection persist in the community, and perhaps, and this sounds cruel, accept that, some people will get infected, a small number of people will die, but hopefully this will be only the ones who are already very, very sick, maybe have a year or two ahead of them. They go a little earlier. We're reserving our facilities, our resources for those who can benefit from it more. A person who's 25 has another 50 years ahead of him. We'd rather spend those resources on him rather than an 89-year-old. Anyway, it's probably not going to survive a year or two. It's cruel, but that's nature. Right, if there are no more questions, it means I've done either a brilliant job or I've gone over everyone's heads, so I'll stop at this point.
Thank you, sir, for creating awareness amongst the audience regarding how to prevent COVID-19. On behalf of St. Francis College, I would like to request Reverend Brother Simon to hand over a token of appreciation to Dr. Murli Mohan.
Now, it's time to commence the panel discussion. For the first panel discussion, Driving Growth Through Innovation and Partnership, we invite Mr. Bharat Shivappa, Chief Strategy and Development Officer, J. Sagar Associates, who will moderate this panel discussion. As J. Sagar represents the Branding and Membership Outreach Committee, I request Mr. Bharat Shivappa to kindly welcome all the panelists with a plan.
May I welcome my panelists for the day, starting with Devesh. Devesh is president of the Bangalore Chambers. I think he needs no introduction. Mr. K.R. Shekhar, again vice president of Chambers and also partner Deloitte. Augustus, the head of talent IBM. And my good friend Badri is a partner with Singve Devan and Uni.
Badri is an absolute authority on GST.
And an absolute authority on GST, as Devesh says. Okay, great. Thank you.
In case you didn't know, he's the one who trained all the GST officers in Karnataka about GST.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here among the eminent panelists who are the learned ones. I also have some of my mentors sitting with me today to discuss what we call as one of the very relevant topics in these times, driving growth through innovation and partnerships. So last week I was in the Global Business Summit hosted by Economic Times in Delhi. And I sat through an interesting interview that was of Stephen Schwarzman, who's the co-founder and chairman of Blackstone, okay, one of the world's largest investor. A Times senior journalist was interviewing him, and this was his first question, that what was Stephen's take on India Inc. and its growth. And Stephen says, for some reason we, which means the global investor, private equity investors, were made to believe that India is poised for a 9% growth. Now here, today, we look at a reality of a 4.5% growth, right? And that got the whole audience kind of silence. A lot of real estate magnates sitting in the room must have kind of sweating that, this is what we hear from the largest investor. So then, after a couple of minutes, there was a second question, that what is his outlook for the future investments in India? And Stephen says, we have invested about 15 billion US dollars in the since 2006. And in the next 3 to 5 years, we would like to double it. Now, this is an interesting paradox of how global is looking at India Inc. and our growth. Imagine if we were at 7.5%, what would have been the investor stake? Now, with that, not wasting much time, let me get into taking introductory views from the eminent panel on the theme of today, which is driving growth through innovation and partnerships. To start with, Mr. Devesh, I would like to request you. You've been an entrepreneur, also interestingly, the Lockheed Martin awardee on innovations, I think almost a decade and a half back. So with your a technology product, I think it was in the aerospace industry, right? The power over Ethernet. So I would like to hear from you, your take on innovation and how do we manage sustained growth using innovation in these times.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So I'm saying, based on your experience, and you're also been an awardee, Lockheed Martin awardee, for as an innovator for your product. So PoE, right? We call power over Ethernet. So I want to understand your take on how do we kind of sustain growth in these times, and how innovation and partnership can become the game changers.
In the global economy today, we have got sort of two ways to approach things. And let's face it, if you look at the clothes that you're wearing, if you're just wearing a standard white shirt, you'll just go to a store and you'll say, yeah, I get the same terracotta shirt. That store next to you is selling it for 500 rupees. You're asking me 600, and then you'll go to the store at 500 and say the store next to you is doing it at 400. So it just becomes a sort of pricing game. But stick a label on that, that says DKNY, or it says FCUK, or it says, I don't know, who's Sabyasachi or something like that. And all of a sudden, that fellow is going to say, you want this shirt for 20,000, take it, otherwise I've got another 10 people behind you. And at that point, you're no longer buying a product, but you're buying somebody's mind, somebody's innovation. And ultimately, it is innovation that is required to keep ahead of competition. And unlike some fallacies that may be in our mind, innovation doesn't have to be something like a big bang. Innovation is very, very small, incremental approaches also. In manufacturing, we have this concept of the Japanese quality techniques, which includes the word Kaizen. And Kaizen basically is a better way of doing it. Just every day, it could be something. I need to put a shaft inside a bush. Now there are two ways. Either I can heat the bush, or I can chill the shaft, or I can use brute force. So somebody came up with a method of doing 1, 2, 3.
and it improves the production process, it reduces my cost and everything. In the chamber, it's the same way. If you see here in front, we have got some of the senior most people from some of the biggest companies in Bangalore, in Karnataka, and maybe even in India. And they share and they continue to share not just with the members of the chamber, but their best practices, what they have spent time innovating. Similarly, the chamber, as I pointed out in my presidential address, we have the Emerging Stars Award where we are focusing on startups. We have innovation awards, but we said let us focus on social innovation. Innovation that can benefit society. We all, for instance, complain about traffic. Who have we seen that has developed an app that can do something about the traffic? I think that is the biggest innovation still waiting to happen. Is there some way we can find a way to beat the traffic? And I'm not talking Google Maps.
Thank you, Devish. Shekhar, you've been, advising various, sectors, corporates, industrialists in your career over last 2.5 decades. Largely dealt with the regulators, policymakers. Now, what's your take on growth partnerships and innovations, and how entrepreneurs should look at leveraging them in these times?
Innovation, it's not something new, but it's there in every corporate organization for ages. But thanks to technology, this innovation concept has come up, has got everybody's attention. If you go back to manufacturing organizations, very old, they used to have a continuous R&D department. Nobody called them as innovators, but R&D department was meant for only for improving the product, process, quality, because it's part and parcel of every manufacturing organization 20 years back. When the industry moved from manufacturing into the technology, IT, and then IT moved to technology, today nothing is called IT, everything is technology. The innovation has got everybody's attention. The reason is very simple. People wanted the service at their doorstep. Customers wanted everything at fast, at a better quality, at their doorstep. So therefore, you need to satisfy the aspirations of the customers and the community. And how to satisfy the aspiration of the community of large only through a better thinking and better process that leads to innovation. Any organization for that matter, whether it is a service organization like us, or whether it is a technology organization like Swiggy, Zomato, Infosys, or manufacturing organizations, innovation has become part and parcel of it. And without innovation, you can't do anything. Innovation does not mean that you need to find out something, a rocket science. Just a question of how you improve yourself in services. To give a simple example, 10 years back, the organization model was asset heavy. Today, everybody is turning towards asset light model. The balance sheet is very, very light. They don't want any heavy assets, everything in asset light model. Can you ever imagine a biggest hotel company does not own any hotel? Can you ever imagine a biggest restaurant does not own any restaurants? So people trying moving towards asset light model rather than an asset heavy model just 10 years back. And one of the ways to look at the asset light model is innovation. And even as services. Let me take my friend is sitting opposite me, Badrinath. 10 years back, have you ever imagined that returns will be filing on online all the tax returns, be it GST, be it sales tax, be it income tax returns? You would not have imagined it. Today, everything is going through online. And the government itself is doing it, they say we'll do a faceless assessment. Probably you may have some here and there some challenges, but the way it is going the next 3 years, you don't need human bodies to do the assessment, maybe robots will be there. So in fact, one of the comments made by one of the captain of the industry in Bengaluru is that Shekhar, over a period of time, you will have robots to do all the jobs which a human being is doing without artificial intelligence is coming up. So the innovation is inevitable. And I see more innovation in the young guys like these people. In fact, I was speaking with some of the startup guys. They said, Shekhar, the guy with 23 to 27, they come out with the better ideas. And they need somebody like you guys to come with the experienced mentor. So they assume that after 45, our brain will not work, we will not be able to innovate anything. Our mind is only to support them. It's a fair assessment of them. But having said that, the young mind has got more energy for innovation. One is innovation. Partnerships. You innovate, but there is always a challenge to take it to the market. There is always to do a commercialization. There is always a challenge to reach out to the customers. And partnership helps us. 10 years back, any organization which when I started my career in 88, I'm 35 years, 10 years back the partnerships are not considered as a viable option in any of the organizations. No, we will not partner, we will do on our own. Because there is always a branding issue, there is a quality issue. Today people prefer partnerships. People more aligned to the partnership because your ability to reach the customers is very high. And to put it in a short, innovation, partnerships, both are inevitable. And probably in the next 10 years, today what I'm saying, the 4D revolution, or next will be 5D, 6D. The next 10 to 15 years, innovation, partnerships are inevitable. And the companies, the professionals who embrace that culture will be successful. Professionals and cultures who do not embrace that culture will be left behind. And I keep repeating to you, Bharat, you work with me, so I know that. Professionals keep running not for winning, for staying in the same place. So you better embrace the innovation, you better embrace the partnership, otherwise you'll be left behind.
Thank you. That is a very interesting perspective. In fact, what Mr. Shekhar touched on was a bot and a human scenario. So taking that, Augustus, I want to maybe request you, you lead a very critical talent function for the largest IT companies in the world. What's your perspective, more from an eye of a lens of a talent leader for innovations and the partnerships driving growth?
Sure, thank you. The first thing I want to say here is a bit shocking to the students. If you are looking for a job, remember one thing, that your college degree is not going to land you a job. Because in the future of work, it is skills. Skills is the new currency, all right? So with that, I have to tell you this. Apart from a college degree, corporations outside are looking for people who come with something called a purpose, okay? A purpose to break across traditional barriers, okay, and to innovate. Now, how do you innovate? Okay, when we say partnerships, I'm going to change it slightly, and I'm going to call it collaboration. Okay, unless you come to a table or a garage and collaborate, you don't get innovation. Okay, so as far as possible, you've got to get people together. You've got to have diversified minds. You've got to have an inclusive mindset. Okay, and that by itself would drive innovation. Then comes what is in store for me. I'll give you a quick analogy, which is a true story of this lady. Her name, let's call her Rukmani. Okay, Rukmani was about 26 years old. She joined this very good MNC from campus, and bright mind. She was doing extremely well, got many awards, went abroad, clients loved her, and things like that. Until one fine morning, she gets a call from her manager who says that, Rukmani, can you come and have a chat with me? So Rukmani is a bit nervous because first thing in the morning if a manager calls you, you messed up something. So she goes and asks him, yes, what is it? And they have a cup of coffee, and then he says, Rukmani, you're a great performer, you came from this campus, you got us new business, rewards and new clients and things like that. But I have to tell you that our organization has shifted its strategy 3 times in 2 years. And therefore, the skills that you bring to the table are going to be relevant in the next 3 months. So if you do not scale up to change your skill set from a half stack to a full stack, then I'm sorry, you don't have a job. So what does Rukmani do? She is very dumbfounded, she's surprised and shocked, nobody spoke to her. She goes and then does various programs. She also invests in herself, does various certifications. She gets her eminence improved on social media, and at the end of 3 months, she has completed various programs and then she is relevant. And then her manager says, okay, we can give you this job, but Rukmani says, no. I'm not really interested in this particular job because I found I had purpose in life, because I today am committed to add to the environment something that I can do. Like for example, I'm very concerned about pollution. So I would like to work for this airline company, cut code in Java, and enable them to have a lower carbon footprint. So I'm going to do that work for 3 days, and I'm going to come and work for you for the other 2 days. So what happened is that the workforce transitioned from there into a gig economy, or what you call a gig workforce, from a single stack set of skills to a full stack set of skills. And what did she do? She went and encashed what she had invested in her, because now she had social eminence and people were willing to pay for her. Okay, so therefore I want to conclude that while a college degree is important, what is relevant in a job is skills that are current and that are futuristic. Thank you.
Interesting. This is, I think we touched upon one of the topics which are very relevant to the crowd mostly. Now, Badri, you had a very interesting experience, right? You are a known GST expert, you trained a lot of the policy makers on the side, Devesh was saying. So you looked at companies from a very different lens. When GST came, it was a disruption. And a lot of them made it very relevant, and a lot of value had happened. And if you look at from a logistics, time that we nationally save. You've seen people responding into, entrepreneurs positively responding and making good out of it. So what are your takes or experiences watching those entrepreneurs making good use of or innovating themselves to adapt and make good use of some of these regulatory changes?
There are 2-3 words which each one of them have mentioned are very critical, which Augustus was mentioning as collaboration, right? Very important. Because when we talk about growth, of course, all of us want to grow. There is no doubt in that. Through innovation and partnerships or collaboration. I'll just take a minute before I answer your question on that. There is this hair in the tortoise story. I think it will take about 10 minutes to say that, so I'll not tell you that. You should read about how that hair and tortoise story is told today versus how it was 25 years ago. It kind of tells you how important partnering and collaborating is. The new version of the hair and the tortoise story. I'm sure Google will give it to you, but I'll not take that time because it will take only 10 minutes on that. Coming back to your question and what Mr. Shekhar also was mentioning, innovation is something which is inevitable. It is unknowingly we are a part of many innovations, but innovation is not as important as adapting it is. You think WhatsApp was an innovation? Yes, but it wouldn't have meant anything if it was not adopted the way it is today. Okay? Even collaborating and partnering for that matter. I don't know how many of you see this, how many of you use this Microsoft. Microsoft, there is something called Office 365. Once you just enter into that, there are so many other applications in that. Not everything is owned by Microsoft. Not all, while almost all of them are. Few of them are not owned by Microsoft, right? So there are few things which we can use within that. This makes the aspect of partnering with somebody or collaborating with somebody and being able to adopt. Adapting is the most important thing. Adapting it is the most important. There are so many innovations simply because it does not adapt. And in any of these innovations, the way I would look at it is mindset has to be there to try it, to adapt it. On NDTV, there are these competitions which go on, where I think it is some 4 or 5 years old when I saw it. There is a competition where each one of them is given exactly 2 minutes to sell a business idea. One of them came up with a business idea, which was what a chemical composition, which if mixed with tar while laying these roads, it will give it that flexibility and extra life. It was innovative, without doubt, but it never saw the light of the day. Nobody was willing to invest in that man who gave that idea. The feedback that he was given was, maybe your invention is very nice, but I don't see the adoption of it. There is so much of resistance that we have to adopt new things today, which kills innovation. I think we should get over that. Mr. Shekhar was mentioning, saying, on the tax side, there is so many things which we are going to see in the near future as far as interaction with the tax office, maybe a income tax or a GST or a customs or whoever that is, which is called faceless. That is the word which Shekhar sir mentioned. Faceless means what? Today if something is to happen at the tax office, I have to go visit them, I have to speak to them, I have to explain to them in person. That is becoming faceless. I think income tax has already implemented it, other laws are behind, But yes, we should be willing to adopt to it. Till we do that, there is no way that things are going to change. Just adding to what he was mentioning on the tax office side. Today, there are so many filings that happen. Everything happens in paper. When there are submissions which happen to any of these tax office side or any of the legal side for that matter, any court or quasi courts, etc., there is so much of paper that goes. And trust me, everything that gets filed has to be filed in 5 or 6 months. Depends. Situation to situation. But how many times does even one paper get seen? Today there is innovation. There is already innovation. We don't need to innovate them, which is video conferencing, or maybe just project it like this. Why waste paper by filing 5 or 7 copies? But yes, we have not adopted it. I think these are the changes which we have to really push, and we should show adoption as much possible, so that even from the government side there is a force to adopt. Today, WhatsApp is part of life. I think all of us will agree to it, right? Tax offices also have started communicating on WhatsApp, because it is not possible to probably communicate without a WhatsApp, right? So even tax offices are forced to adopt. So look at something like that. Maybe a faceless assessment, as he said. Yes, success of that depends on how flexible we are, how adaptive we are, and how we are able to support that. More than I think there are enough and more innovations. I think there are enough and more ideas. I think we should, it goes back, I'll just take a minute more. I don't know, half of you would have been born also. In the early 1980s, there was only one channel on TV which was called Doordarshan. There used to be a serial which was called Star Trek. I don't know how many of you remember that also. Star Trek, right? So half the, 3/4 of them would have been born also. This was in the early 80s. It was about a space, something related to space, going to moon, Mars, etc. Those days, 1980s. I remember 3 things in that. 1980s, trust me, 1980s, early 1980s. There was a lookalike of a mobile phone in that. There was a lookalike of a small, very small computer, which we call as a palm top or a laptop, right? Yes. And the third one, these 2 have come true, so you'll be able to relate to that. These 2 have come true, innovations. The third one, innovation only, which is yet not come true, is, I'm wearing a watch. There is one person, that Captain Spock or something in there. He presses something. Okay, he knows it, right? If I press something on my watch, I disappear here and appear somewhere else. That one thing has not yet come true. there are enough ideas. I think we need a very conducive climate and atmosphere to kind of convert innovations into, dreams or thoughts into reality. And yes, even more, the stronger will that is required is to adapt. Because we are all resistant to change. We are all very resistant to change. Today, if I have to speak about GST, I think from a legislation point of view, it is a fabulous law. It's a fabulous law. I'm not trying to sell that law to any of you because I do that. No, not really. It's a fantastic piece of legislation. But where we have failed is in really adapting it. There will be challenges. I mean, it's one of the biggest things that has happened in the last 100 years in the independent India. It is the biggest thing to have happened in independent. Don't ever think that it will be flawless. Of course there will be. But are we willing to, go through that extra mile to let that, to beat that challenge and see how it kind of helps us? That is where I think the challenge is to be.
Interesting, lovely. Okay, so now let's dwell on the second important aspects of, further on the collaboration that you talked about partnerships. See, recently, Modi launched his vision for growth for India. He said, collaborate to create. And further, he collaborate to create. And then he said, okay, create to sustain. So collaborate to create has become the headlines and the mantra of next, which means he definitely hinted us about, developing very effective partnerships. And they were the days where we looked at alliance as a competition. But today is an age where in competition you find alliances. Telecom is a great example. I'm not referring to the cartel, but I'm referring to those infrastructure sharing and all those aspects. So I want to ask both of you your take on how can enterprises today, different sectors today, industries today, can build effective partnership for it. Maybe you can share some perspective and example.
Whether it's partnership in business, whether partnership in life, if this has to be successful, there's only one mantra. Identify a right partner, accept the partner, and go with the partner. There will always be a challenges in the partnership. During the process, you learn it, you make the changes, adapt yourselves. But very, very important, Bharat, for a partnership, business partnership to be successful. In a business side, every business we look for three. Number one, by aligning my business with other person, whether how much my branding will enhance, how much my branding will suffer. Because branding is very critical. For example, let me talk from BCIC perspective. If tomorrow is a program with somebody else, the first thing that me, Devesh and Parashuram will think about is that by working the program, it's a partnership. By going the program with them, by doing a long-term alliance, whether it will enhance the BCIC brand, whether it will bring down the BCIC brand, what is called the brand reputation. That's very important. If the partnership does not lead to my brand enhancement strategy, brand reputation, protect my brand reputation, will not do. Therefore, the person seeking the alliance, the person who is willing to provide the alliance, should have a solid brand, and they should not have any adverse anything. Number one, the brand conscious. Second, quality conscious. Very important, because the business, what is very important is the delivery. The delivery skills, the delivery mechanism, and the process in which you follow the delivery mechanism is very important. He talked about the Microsoft applications. Not every application developed by Microsoft, developed by a lot of other people. It's not only true to Microsoft, it is true for everyone. In professional life, it is also there. Everywhere it is there. Where today the requirement of the business or requirement of the community is very large. And I will not be able to do everything by myself. There is always a requirement of working with somebody. Just to give an example, a Flipkart or a Swiggy. If a Flipkart Flipkart or a Swiggy, they need a product is manufactured by somebody. Flipkart or a Swiggy is only a platform. Somebody has to deliver the product from somewhere to you. If the delivery guy delays it, the image of the delivery guy is not taking a beating, the image of the Flipkart or the Swiggy is taking a beating. So it is naturally important for an organization to make sure that organization with whom I align has got a sufficient infrastructure for delivery. If that sufficient infrastructure for delivery is not there, then alignment is not possible. Therefore, second important critical part is delivery. Third important aspect is people. You can say technology, you can say innovation, you can say hardware. Without people, you cannot do anything. We may have robots, but somebody should operate a robot on the switch. The guy does not put on the switch, the robot will not function. So ultimately, there's a people is required. How much the organization gives importance to the people. For example, let me give the same Flipkart or a Swiggy or the delivery market maker as an example. If the delivery guy is not ethically correct, is not value-based, his integrity-based, is a failure, it impacts the reputation. Therefore, not only the quantity of the talent, but the quality of the talent, how much ethically the organization is done. These three things are very, very critical for the partnership to succeed. And more important, both the organizations should know the place where they want to travel, their destiny, and there should be an open commitment. There may be challenges in reaching their destination, but we need to accept the partnership and take it forward. There are large organizations which are very successful. I can keep on quoting it, but there are absolutely large which are very successful in the partnerships. For example, you know about HP and Deloitte. It's a classic case where having is a partnership successful. There are multiple examples I can give you. Even in professional field, if you go to the lawyers, some of the lawyers they will not say no to any chartered accountants who come with a brief because they know that this guy will not say, not lie. So partnership is important, but partnership will be successful only if these four criteria is met. Otherwise, it will not be successful.
So one is, as you said, this is a, shall we say, like a voluntary partnership. Also, you have what I would call as causal partnerships. Now we've got four people sitting together in the front row who are more busy talking to each other than actually focusing on us. So they are in partnership with each other, keeping each other entertained. Okay, I've been watching a lot of students. Basically, they were listening. So I'll make one dramatic statement. We all have seen, how many people say 3-4 years ago during your ICSE exams or SSLC exams, suddenly power failure, you could not study, you had to study by candlelight. How many people can raise their hands and say that yes, you have experienced major power failure? Yeah? Very good. And you will curse the government, right? Well, see, we were talking studies. You don't have candlelight dinners with your girlfriend over studies, then you're indulging, then you're having a very different kind of study, okay? So, now, if I was to make a statement that it was precisely because of these power cuts, Karnataka is the IT capital of the world, you are going to go, what the heck is this guy talking about? But now I'll take you back, give you a bit of history. Karnataka, rather Bangalore, was the first city in India to have electric street lights. But by the time of independence, Karnataka was already power deficient. If you see Karnataka, all the power is generated to the north, bulk of industry is in the south. So what would happen? We lost a lot of power, plus Karnataka never got a central power plant, no NTPC power plant. It has very heavy dependence on hydroelectric power. Now we have, in the last 20 years, invested in thermal power. So when the power requirement is most, the water availability is the least. All of that resulted in that heavy industry did not enter Karnataka. You did not see the big steel mills and all that. Instead, what you saw precision industries. You saw the Indian telephone industries. You saw HMD making machine tools. You saw ace designers come in. You started seeing people like Bosch, Mr. Ramesh Saligram is sitting here, who are making high precision machined parts, diesel fuel pumps, etc. So you started seeing an entire generation of companies who are bringing high value addition, but not much energy consumption. Now, the operative word goes back to value addition. When I'm doing value addition, it means I've got to start using my mind. That in turn drives what partnerships, it then generates demand for educational institutions, which is why you see so many educational institutions in and around South Karnataka. When Texas Instruments came to India in the early 80s, specifically 1982, looking to where we must invest in India to set up an offshore development center, they were finalized finally on Bombay and Bangalore. And the reason they selected Bangalore, one, of course, our better climate, but most importantly, because of the culture of education and the educated workforce that already existed. That is a partnership caused between industry and educational institutions, which resulted in what Bangalore is today. So that's a causal partnership. And today, no other city in Bangalore, or rather in India, can come up as fast as Bangalore. Why does any IT company, technology company, no matter what the cost, they first set up in Bangalore? Because we have an ecosystem. And that ecosystem means we have a whole bunch of organizations, educational institutions, workplaces, companies, employers, providers, everything working in partnership. Now this is a causal partnership. It need not be a deliberate partnership, but it is a cause and effect partnership, but it is still a collaborative partnership. So to create ecosystems, you still have to work with partnerships.
Partnerships and ecosystem, beautifully explained. To just extend that to you, Augustus. See, IBM, your company particularly, has been one of, I would say, the pioneers in experimenting with partnerships, and it's grown. Your success has been through, successful partnerships, collaborations, whether it's in telecom or in consulting. So, can you give a little light on what worked well?
Sure, happy to do that. First, position closer home, which is industry-academia partnerships. Okay, how many industries are actually partnering with you, St. Francis? It's a question. The other one is, how much endowment are you attracting from the industry? Then my other question is, do you have an innovation lab? Are you going out there into the marketplace and saying, asking them, hey, what are your problems? Throw your problems at us. We'll come up with a solution. May not be technology solution. We'll come up with a solution. That is most important, okay, to have a partnership, because just not having a partnership is not enough. But does that partnership add value to your strategy? Okay? So does that add value to your belief system, so to say? And therefore, like I told you Rukmani's story, she had a belief system, she had a value system to make this world a better place. So she went and did something through the business, through a challenge at her. She's going and finding a solution using her skills. So similarly, it's so important to have the value system resonate with the strategy to make the partnership a success, in addition to what Shekhar had stated earlier. Now, in business, I think we go back about 10 years, okay, or even 15, when the telecom business had opened up in India, and Bharti Airtel was one of the biggest telecom, not the biggest at that time, was a telecom provider. And this was a very unique partnership that IBM did with Bharti, and this was called Business on Demand, or IT on Demand, where we said that we could provide you IT support or IT power just like water or electricity. Okay? You open a tap, you get IT, you use what you want, and then you shut it off. Okay? And then we went into this $1 billion deal with Bharti, where we said we will take care of all your computer IT related challenges. You go and focus on your core. Your core is to go and get customers. Okay? Go and acquire customers and build your base while we will manage all those other things. That partnership partnership worked extremely well, and 4 other IT companies went on and signed bigger deals, and that opened the entire telecom sector hugely. Okay? So partnerships are also about that. Partnerships are very intrinsically built into your business plan. Okay? Thank you.
That was very interesting. Thank you, Augustus. I think just before you, I think we may have to excuse Shekhar. I think we may have to unfortunately excuse Mr. Shekhar. He has to run for a meeting. So please, a big round of applause for his thoughts he has shared. I think Mr. Shekhar, sorry, I think there's a memento that they would like to share. Shekhar, one second. No, only for him, only for him. You would like to give your concluding thoughts on, your take on one is partnership collaboration. Secondly, what would you advise the current regulators? In fact, Stephen was also mentioning that this coronavirus disruptions have created also opportunities. These disruptions today, whether the market down or this epidemic, has created also opportunities in terms of companies have to now diversify their supply chain. So that creates a lot of opportunity as well. So the criticality is that the government regulations to be made smoother to kind of build up or respond to those opportunities. So what's your take or advice to the regulators today? 2 or 3 suggestions that you would like to make that would boost our growth and help our entrepreneurs.
Sure. I'll put it this way, especially the coronavirus part of it. Yesterday I got to one of the tech parks for one of the meeting. I was surprised to see that place. I think almost everybody there have decided to work from home. So virtually, I could see only 2 other people apart from me in the entire open area. I was also told saying this is an opportunity for a lot of companies to test their business continuity. What happens if something like this happens? They're preparing themselves also. So the thought was, let's say the business continuity works very well. The work from home model works very well for a lot of companies than which actually offer to do. Then what happens to the real estate that is there in Bengaluru? In this aspect also, innovation is required. Now, real estate, who own this entire real estate, have to think what to do if the work from home models really works really good. Fine, not all industries it works, but yes, they are making it work now. They are making it work. The same thing. I think we should use and optimally use technology that is available today. Whether it is us as service providers or, if I'm talking about the regulator perspective, if that technology can be used by us to connect with people wherever they are in this world, why not we use that as far as interaction between the regulator and us is concerned? Today, if maybe Bharat will be able to add to it, if there is some high court that has to appear in tomorrow in Bombay, unfortunately he has to go. He has no options. He cannot sit here and technologically be present there. It is not possible. While we do this in a lot of other work, why not we use it for our interaction with the regulators? Mr. Shekhar mentioned, and it is part of law today, it is called faceless assessments. It started last year. There is a lot of things happening this year also as part of the project. There were a few discussions which happened. Faceless assessments means what? It is basically bringing in anonymity. So if there is my income tax return getting verified by somebody, that somebody does not know that it is mine, and I don't know who that officer is. Right? The expectation is that this will kind of reduce or kill the corruption that is available, corruption that is otherwise prevalent. The belief. Extend this. This is an opportunity to extend. Actually, there was some discussion that we were having recently in the context of COVID-19, what you said. What happens? There was a wrong, finally it turned out to be a false message on the WhatsApp saying your all offices, schools, everything has to be closed down with immediate effect. In fact, that is when Bharat and I spoke whether this event is going to happen today. Okay. So, all said and done. If that happens, what are we going to be facing? Are we prepared for that? A lot of things have to still go on. When there is a strike in India, your necessities, your chemists and druggists are all open. The basic transport will still continue because that's a requirement. Okay? Now, if this is going to hit us in terms of, look, it's going to be a lockdown. While doctor mentioned that lockdown is not going to be possible in India. Hypothetically, if that hits us, can we even think of what is going to happen? But trust me, it is not going to be as bad as what we've thought. There is enough and more infrastructure and equipment that we have today where probably 75% of the work can still go on. Life is not going to come to a standstill. The technology is going to be put to test. The adaptation of that is going to be put to test for life to go on. I'm going to just probably repeat what I told earlier. Adaptation is the key for anything that we are talking about. Adaptation is the key, it is. Yes, it is. Bharat may be able to add to it. Today, it is not only, you would have heard of artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. I think we've just scratched the surface. But we have tried using that in the knowledge space. Yes or no? We have. And yes, let me close by this comment. It's a very good thing that even the regulators have started using that. Machine learning and artificial intelligence is the way they are identifying who should be verified. And after that, they are using a lot of analytics to deep dive into what really needs to be verified. This is an example of adoption. What I'm trying to say is this should be more. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Badri. It's very interesting. I think you are very clear in focusing your message on implementation. Is the key, and adaptation is the key. I think that was insightful. So we have come to kind of end of our session. Thanks to the time that we have. Yeah, sure. Some concluding remarks from the panel. Yeah, you can.
Just 30 seconds. I wouldn't leave this place without throwing a challenge. And because I've known that, do you all have this, right? What is this? A smartphone, right? And who invented this? Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs is from our generation. We gave you the smartphone. My challenge to you is, what are you going to give the world? And the world is at your feet. You have opportunity. India has the youngest workforce in the world. You have funding like it's been like never before. So the world is at your feet. What are you going to give? That's the challenge I throw to you. Thank you.
All yours, world is all yours. I'll wait to see the next generation from the younger crowd. Thank you, gentlemen. In fact, that was great insights from the panel. We got from the perspective of driving innovation in these times, driving successful partnerships, collaboration, managing talent, looking at a scenario of a hybrid bot and human working environment, and most importantly, changes. So these are the key messages that I've learned today. And before, while we are concluding, any questions, we could restrict to one or two questions from the audience. Questions, thoughts? Any from faculty, anybody has any questions? Convinced or convinced? We either convince them or confuse them. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all.
Thank you, but this is one moment. We have to give him space. Aja. Thanks, Augustus. Jai Ram.
See, Brother Simon will hate me for asking this question, but I said we should ask the girls, which of the guys has the most innovative approach to patawing you? That by itself is an innovation.
Give a token of appreciation to the panelists and the moderator.
Moderator of the second panel, Ms. Samira Fernandez, to lead the discussion on building future-ready organizations.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. It was a very exciting and engaging first panel discussion that we had on partnerships and collaborations. We will now commence with the second panel discussion, and this is a very informative subject because it is all about how future-ready organizations are. Without wasting further time, let me quickly call upon the eminent panelists we have with us today. May I request Mr. T.R. Parsuraman, who is the Senior Vice President of BCIC and the Whole-Time Director, Toyota Industries Engine India Limited, be with us. May I also call upon Mr. Indushekhar, who is the Vice President and General Manager of Volvo Group. May I call upon Dr. S. Devarajan from Toyota Motors, who is the Senior Vice President. May I also call upon Mr. Ramesh Saligrama, who is the General Manager, Manufacturing at Bosch Limited. May I call upon Dr. L. Ravindran, who is the CEO of Weltmans Enterprises Management. We also have with us Mr. Naresh Pagaria, who is the CEO of Quality Foods. Gentlemen, it's really lovely to have you with us because this is a very exciting subject. We do not talk about the present, we talk about how future-ready organizations are. And I think thinking about the future just takes us on a leadership lead because, we can curate different ideas and thoughts. For all of you in the audience, this has not been pre-planned. The questions have not been asked. So I think this is something where all of us can learn from. What is it that the thought leaders across BCIC really engage with in their organization? And how can we all learn to adapt ourselves to make a difference? I would like to start by asking Dr. Devarajan, from the manufacturing perspective, TVS, a lot of changes happening in the marketplace. What are some of the steps that you all are doing and taking to make your organization future ready?
Thank you very much and good morning. The only thing that is constant today is change. From our big migrants, we make two-wheelers and three-wheelers. The changes is happening customer preferences. So a lot of you are the customers for our vehicles. There's a huge demand of changes. What's happening in the car industry is coming in the two-wheeler industry. What's happening to the cell industry, cell phone industry is coming to the two-wheeler industry and three-wheeler industry. So there is a lot of change happening in the entire Indian industry. One more thing is from April 1st, BS6. We are having BS6 much more stricter than the US. A lot of change is happening in the Indian industry in terms of the vehicles which we make and which vehicles which we use. That's going to give you a better fuel efficiency. So there's a customer benefit. So this change is coming not to the car. A lot of demand from the customers of what new thing can be happening. Similarly, same thing is happening in the manufacturing industry. In the factory, also a lot of things are changing. Automation, thinking of the new things coming to the future. So being that changes, we are trying to make nation ready in terms of giving innovative ideas to the youngsters. A lot of new things are in terms of the applications portion of it. So it's a huge change and shift towards what can be accepted and what can be adopted by all of us. And all of you are in a fantastic time in which you will be coming to the industry with a lot of new ideas. That's the way we are going to do it.
Exciting and insightful points that you have raised. Let us ask the Senior Vice President of BCIC, Mr. T.R. Parsuraman. A lot of changes that are happening across corporates, and BCIC is leading the way. What is your advice to corporates to gear up for future initiatives?
Thanks, Samira, and good morning all. I think the key to the futuristic is the order of flexibility. I think change, as you say, is always constant, which is continuously changing, and we are not options. I think how do we develop the flexible leaders to take the challenges? Today the big challenge is the leaders have mindsets and they have fixed opinions. And therefore the change is something astronomical. I think the future technology is going to be completely different. As you all know today, the Internet of Things, the digital transformation, the 3D printing, machine learning, artificial intelligence, they're all taking the corporates and manufacturing organizations to a new paradigm. So what I feel is how agile the leaders are to these changes and have an open mind to accept these changes. I always remember the words of Swami Jagabodananda, who said an experiencer should have an experience without having an experiencer, which means you should have an open mind. For example, you go to watch a movie in a theater, you are the experiencer, watching the movie is the experience. If somebody has told you that already the movie is useless, you already lost the experience. Therefore, I think the key is how you can be ultra sharp, agile, and I think the organization should develop leaders with that kind of flexibility, meaning they should be able to work in different domains, and you should break all the conventional wisdom of functional specialization. I think that would be the biggest key that organizations should be looking for.
Well said. And let us go to Mr. Indushekhar. When Mr. Parsuraman spoke about flexibility in the workplace, companies are moving from issuing directives to more collaboration and knowledge sharing. How does Volvo take communication and strategy forward?
Good morning. First of all, my pranams to my Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba, who has made me to come to this part of the life. And so I thank my Guru. Next important is to thank Samira BCIC organization, and the industry experts for giving me this opportunity to be here today. St. Francis, amazing, amazing campus. Thanks to Brother Simon and Matthew, and all of you are rocking today. So the question, if I go back to the question, collaboration and the strategies. You know, the word collaboration, when you really get into it, it's very to say, yeah, we need to collaborate. We need to go collaborate and, achieve this milestone. But there's a very, very, to reach that excellence in collaboration, organizations are actually struggling. And when the desired results are not coming in, then we blame it on there wasn't good collaboration. So, in that sense, organizations today are trying to take a step back and go to the root cause of it. Are we communicating enough? COVID is an issue, but are we communicating enough? Are we communicating enough to change our behavior? Are we cooperating enough? So from a step of communication, have you moved on to the step of cooperating to one another? Cooperating with team members. When you do these two, then you actually move into the third and most important one, which is called collaboration. If you don't understand this communication and you don't cooperate, then you cannot really have the excellence in collaboration. And more importantly, collaboration means coming together, collective approach to solve problems, to strategize stuff for the organization. So what is important there is collective intelligence. The intelligence that comes from the entire group, the intelligence that comes from the faculty. Similarly, organizations today are trying to devise all their strategies, not with few board of directors or chairman sitting across and then saying, we need to do something. No, include employees, include everybody there, and use the collective intelligence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shekhar. And while we talk about collective intelligence, it also connotes high-powered networks. These are the days where everyone wants to know who is talking to who, which company is associated with the other, which part of the world, where are the networks, what is happening, where is the buzz? So let me ask Mr. Naresh Bagaria, your company goes international. You've been in the UAE, Middle East, many other countries. How important is international collaborations to you?
Happy morning to all of you, and thanks, Samira. I just want to start with one thing, Now 8 years back, that was the first time we participated in an international exhibition. That was our first step towards the foreign markets, exports. And I still remember the initial 2 years when most of the countries, most of the people who used to come from various countries were not even inclined to visit the style of India. Few of them, not all of them, but certainly some part of the world were not, India mein itna chamal nahi banega, something like that kind of a feeling was there. But let me tell all of you here, today, we are there, we've been participating in one of the biggest exhibitions in the world on food. And today, in the last 5-7 years, the entire scenarios have changed. Today, the best of the European client, the best of the US client, Australian client comes not just to my style, any of the Indian style, and that's the kind of reputation that we have built in the last 7-8 years or so. Now, it could be due to the new political change, it could be maybe evolving of our own country, but there has been a drastic change. And I'm sure it's the right time for all youngsters like you to lay the foundation when you, another 4, 5 years or 6 years, when you start your industry or go into a new profession. I think India has really emerged on the international map, and it is the right time for all of us in manufacturing. I'm sure the automotive world might be going through a little turnover, but I'm sure the opportunities are immense. It's only a time frame when everybody will sure that the future is very bright and we can really work together on that. Thank you.
Great. So looking at a bright future, we also have with us Mr. Ramesh Saligrama. And if you can tell us, what is your perspective of today, the present times, and what are some of the competencies needed, not just by people and employees, but by companies as well, to emerge successfully?
Hello. Good morning. Thank you, Samira. See, I will touch upon here what I recall. Two things. One is, all along when we joined our professional career, we used to look for lifetime employment. So I take myself, if I have joined Bosch, till retirement I will stay with Bosch. Or in the past, my parents used to say, get into a government employment, so you will be safe. So now the shift is the lifetime employment is versus employability. Now lifetime employment can still be dreamt provided one individual is employable. So why I say this is, in the past, all of us knew how long Ambassador lived. Now you can see every year how many models will come and how fast the product life cycle is ending. I still recall one of my product where when I joined, I used to be told, hey, why are you joining into this department? This product is going to die. And my last 30 years says in this organization, we want it or not, the one which was thought it will die, it has changed, evolved, and still retained the life on it. The one which took the birth about 10 years ago, last year it has already gone. So that means if I don't adapt, if I don't catch up, then I will die. If I see myself into the futuristic, my life can get extended. So this is something even applicable for individuals. If I don't change, if I don't adapt, if I don't learn new things, then I am not employable for future. This is the perspective Bosch has.
That's really insightful, because as Bosch has this perspective, I would like to ask Dr. Ravindran, all this while people were talking about how can we become a leader, but today the narrative has changed from saying how can I become a leader, people are asking how can I get more followers. So I would like to ask you, where is the shift? Do you feel that's the right way forward in changing mindsets?
Good morning. Thank you, Samira. Thank you, St. Francis College. I'm really fascinated by this place. Thank you for inviting us. Your question has been one to do with how to deal with the change. Is that right? And what else? How to get followers. You're on the right track. You are in the medium where we are. BCIC is the right forum to be followed upon for growth in academics. I'm very sure. That is how I begin this answer. Followership is actually a much more simpler task than leadership. If you look at the business practices of the past, you will always find the market leader and the innovator always not succeeding. It is the follower who makes it. Let us look at two different examples. Eastman Kodak, for example, were the pioneers, right? All of you know Kodak? You know Kodak? Have you heard about it? They were the biggest digital camera company that existed. They don't exist today. You have heard of Sony? Sony Signal, all of you know. Sony Walkman, have you seen? It doesn't exist today. Others have taken over. Who took it over? Today, virtually with a smartphone, you are ruling it out. Nokia was a leader. Motorola was a leader. Many others have been leaders. But but the followers have actually taken over. Due to lack of time and his prompting at the beginning that the answer is very short, I will keep it at this.
Great. So we also received a notification that there were many other press conferences being held today, but they have been cancelled by the government due to certain, other issues. Most of the roads also now are being closed because I think they want to contain the coronavirus symptoms. So due to shortage of time, if I could just wrap this discussion with 2 instances and have your views. Is that okay? For the benefit of our students, pay attention. So I was reading the newspaper, yesterday, and I read this very fascinating topic of Elon Musk. And I don't know, it's something that I felt out of this world. He wants to have a majority of jobs, not in Earth, in Mars by 2050. We talk about issues, concerns, and how can businesses collaborate together. But this man has a totally different side. Plenty of jobs there, and he's working on that. And he's also put a red alert to the public and to the world, saying, let's start working fast and work together and collaborate so that we can make it possible before he dies. So I would like to ask the panel on my right, what is your take on it? Does that make sense? Is that something superficial? Or is that something where companies, leaders such as yourselves, can work together, support his causes, support other such causes, and, fast track the pace of this world? I will start by asking you, Mr. Parsuraman.
I think it's a fantastic question. It recollects me of a man landing on the moon, 1969, when Neil Armstrong said, "This is a small step for a man, but a giant leap for mankind." I think exactly 10 years before, John F. Kennedy said, "I would like to put the man on the moon." That was a great mission. And ultra precision, exactly 10 years, man landed on the moon. Can just anybody imagine 50 years back, somebody talking about landing on the moon? 60 years back, when Kennedy said it was 1959, exactly it happened. I think the vision of the leader is able to see that kind of farsightedness. Compared to that kind of a goal, putting man on the Mars is not a very difficult challenge. 60 years back we talked about it, and today it is a reality. And definitely I think that kind of a thinking is very important. Another example, people asked Steve Jobs about the iPad. When iPad was launched, they asked Steve Jobs, "We have never seen you talking to the customer. How did you launch this amazing product?" And Steve Jobs said, "Normally you talk to the customer, try to get his expectations. But we always look at 3 or 4 levels, even beyond what the customer can think." Imagine, for example, when iPad was thought about, people didn't have any idea about iPad. Palm talks, desktops, laptops are very popular. So when you go to that kind of a level, he calls it an epiphany or the cloud busting of ideas, where there is no competitor for it. I think that is the kind of a level he is looking at. So for iPad, there is no competitor for the last several years. Nobody is able to go near to that. I think from that perspective, I think what you said is right. Similarly, the same thing is Wright brothers. When they started flying the plane, it was something amazing. I think looking into the stories, definitely 2050 landing on the Mars is definitely a possibility according to me. Thank you.
I can just add a comment over here. We call in management big, hairy, audacious goal. Be happy. So what you said is something like, getting or creating jobs in Mars. Maybe they're looking, setting as a BHAG. Maybe Google has a BHAG. We want to be in here. Okay. Lalit Modi, IPL 20, the man who created that business. When everybody complained that spectators don't come to the stadium, he said, create entertainment in stadium. That's the BHAG. So it continues in the world of business.
Well said, well said. And Dr. Devarajan, can we have your views?
New York education system, for example, what all changes can happen to make the changes will happen in the Indian lives. So I was talking in the morning how we can extend your education to have three major areas in terms of your own economic study, which you're going to make in the commerce area, in terms of the environment and society. Society in all these three areas with this question forward. We need to think what will be our next idea and what will be our next contribution, what we all can make. I think it's a very thought process which is coming in. May not be to the Mars or may not be to other areas, but what changes can happen in our own experiences, what changes can happen in our own application, and hence what are we doing today. I think we'll be able to take it forward.
Thank you, Dr. Devrajan. And now over to the panel on my left. So there was a book that I was reading by Dr. Shashi Tharoor, which talks about the New World Disorder. And he says with all the chaos in the world, Mexico, US, Ukraine and different countries, India can really emerge as a superpower. Now while he says that, another article that I read, I think it was on March 5th, was by ISRO. And they were planning to launch the geo satellite, the geotagging satellite, so that every nook and corner, especially of India to start with, could be tracked for various purposes. But what happened is, due to some technical failure, that was slowed down. So I would like you all to get into a debate exactly opposite to what they have said. Does it make sense to have these huge visions and aspirations forward? Or do we need to take it slow, keep our ear to the ground, and still have our strong foundation in place? I would like to start by asking Mr. Ramesh Saligrama.
I think I don't want to go in opposite, but in order to realize that what is necessary is to also do it in small steps. So that means for every journey, we should have what we need to do today, what we need to do say 5 years down the line, what we need to do say 20 years down the line. So if we can divide that, so without these small steps, 20 years later we cannot imagine, it will not drop. It has to be supported with the action. So in order to do that, maybe what would be necessary for us to see what Shashi Tharoor said, that in order to do that, what is needed for us is to build infrastructure for us. Is it necessary? It's not that 5 years down the line it is needed today. It should have been done yesterday, but at least we should start today. I think it is necessary. In order to fulfill long-term mission, short-term targets are very much necessary.
Can we always continue to say, ever since my childhood, that India is an underdeveloped country and we are a poverty-ridden country, that we cannot think big? I never could study in a college like this during my graduation days, right? The kind of facilities that is provided today is unimaginable. Would the children of these days ever go to the college that I went to or the school that I went to? No. Right? So therefore the dreams have certainly got to be much bigger. India is no more a country which can dream small.
Thank you. And over to Naresh.
I just want to add, while we need the Elon Musks of the world, we need Steve Jobs, we need a lot of these kind of terrifying people. But if I look from my perspective, from the Indian perspective, and my points would be, how much changes on the ground at the grassroots level for a country like India? Like for example, has the life of an agriculturist changed? I think we really need to ponder about it. Have education system changed? If you ask me the place where we are sitting today, we've not been much enough. I think there also we need something to really change about. A lot of things that have been taught 20 years back to me, there has been changes, no denial, but there has to be a lot of things that is the what industries like us we need. Are these people who are going to come up, let's say in the next 3-5 years, are they ready to be just taken inside without doing any training or very minimal training? I think no. A lot of changes. I think at the grassroots level, if we can do these
appreciate your views and taking time off for this. May I now quickly request, the management of St. Francis College to award a token of our appreciation to the panelists, as well as the President of the Bangalore Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Devesh, to recognize the panelists.
Okay, at the BCIC, we are at least we say let's go green one pot at a time. So I'm going to present this to our panelists, but they have all requested that the students of St. Francis please plant it on your campus grounds and look after it.
Mr. Devesh, please wait on the stage. And can we have Brother Simon as well to do the honors? We will now have a group photo with the panelists. Members, Ms. Richa as well, please come forward. Chetan, Rizwan, Brother Matthew, please come forward.
Now, we have a special invitee, Mr. Chetan Kumar, Assistant Editor, Times of India, who will shed some light on the prevailing economic scenario in our country. May I request Mr. Chetan to kindly throw some light on this.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me? I have the cruel duty to stay between you and lunch. See, I'll just try to put things into perspective. You've heard about 10 people, 11 people speak about what you would be in the future and what you must do to get to where you're dreaming to be and where our economy is and all that, and why the situation that's prevailing in our economy will have a bearing in what may shape your future. Right, I'll just give you an anecdote. We're going back. This is Jan 3rd, 2016. The Indian Science Congress was being held in Mysore. There were, I think, about 4 Nobel laureates, and one of them was making his presentation at the inaugural. So he had the screen lit up like this. You saw a lot of people. He was trying to speak about the great contribution India has done to the field of science. And this was 2016, and there was just one color photograph. There was one color photograph, and all the other Indian scientists he was talking about were photographed in black and white.
That's because he was talking about people like C.V. Raman and all that. And in the last 50 to 60 years, we've not had a serious contribution made in the field of science from this country. We're extremely happy when we hear about Flipkart. You want to order a roll, you like Swiggy. But look at all the names your panelists were mentioning, right? When they're speaking about innovation, they said Elon Musk, they said the iPhone guy, Steve Jobs. And it's not their fault really. See, it's a lot to do with where we've been putting our money, and which is why you need to understand why and where our economic situation is and what kind of bearing it would have on you. So if you look at the kind of investments that have been going into research and development in this country, it doesn't match up to about what 6 universities in 1 state in the United States get. So with that as a background, we need to look at where we are right now. We're talking about the Flipkarts, the Amazons, gig economy, artificial intelligence, machine learning. What does all of these things have in common? It's data, right? You need to have information, you need to know information. And that is where I think we are lacking. If you look at the GDP figures, like one of the panelists was pointing out, an investor thought we would grow at 9%, or that was what it was made out to be. But now we're speaking about 4. But the economic survey that was released on Feb 17th, I think, it still says we'll make it up to 6.5, which most economists don't think is true. And as we look at what happened yesterday, we've, I think, lost nearly 3,000 points on the Sensex. It's a temporary thing, coronavirus and all that. We will bounce back. But will we is the question, and why you need to sort of seek information. I think that quote that one of the panelists was using was very, very important, that all of us try and know what we don't know. So that's where the game of the future is, right? It's about what you don't know. So you need to understand where we're heading and what these numbers mean to you. And if you're not curious about those things, your names are unlikely to be on the panels where you hear people like Steve Jobs or anybody else. And that's not because you or I are incapable, it's also about how a system works and what kind of scope you have to pursue your ideas. Right? We had a lot of industrialists. I was chatting with Mr. Narayan Murthy from Infosys the other day. He was talking about the way our children need to learn must change. Nobody should go to school to pass an exam, they must go there to learn. It's a fantastic idea. That's how we grew up. That's how I could grow up, but I was, I think, still a lot more luckier than you guys. But I don't think you can walk into Infosys with a great idea and land a job if you don't have a paper in your hand that says you've been qualified as a BSc graduate or a computer science engineer. That is where the industry is also failing, in the sense that in the last 20-25 years, we've had courses designed and we've had rat races of engineers and people wanting to be electrical engineers first, and then computer science became a big thing. So everybody is running, trying to score 90 percentile points and get certificates, right? So what happens to the joy of learning? I think that is where we're losing out. And for innovations to happen, you need to learn because you're curious. And you need to make some time and take some time out to sort of figure out why you're doing it, the processes. If you want innovation, it's always in the process. Science is about process as much as about the end result. There have been multiple discoveries. I mean, if one goes on, you can go on. A lot of big discoveries have actually happened by accident while the scientist was in the process of trying to do something else altogether. So it's the process. The joy of learning is, I think, what is being sucked out of our lives year after year. And you need to figure out how to regain that, and I think that can happen only when students are curious and they sort of enforce the management or teachers to do that. And I'm sure your teachers are all more than willing to sort of give you that kind of time and encourage you to do whatever you want. Our panelist from IBM was not there. His question about, do you have an innovation lab? I think those are the kind of things that educational institutions must have. And for all of this,
false promise and wrong misinformation about everything being hunky-dory can also be disastrous. Sometimes you need to seek out the actual numbers, you need to figure out where we stand, are we really going to grow? As of September last year, 40% of affordable housings were not being sold. And we were talking about Elon Musk putting something in Mars. India has a program to send human beings to space. By 2022, the Prime Minister announced in 2018, and the whole country sort of stood up and said, we'll be sending someone to space and bring them back safely. As of February for this year, ISRO wanted 4,000 crores for that. The government said take 2,200. 4 astronauts have gone to Russia to train, and the government hasn't signed something called GSL, government sanction letter, without which they're not able to obtain salaries. And these are our astronauts who are being trained. And it's not about any political party that's in the present regime or in the past. So I think collectively, as governments year after year have failed to put enough money in innovation and research, and it's not something new that is happening. And that's because we are such a huge and large country, and the social sectors, the need to have critical infrastructure like water supply and all of that sometimes takes precedence. And which is why we need to grow as an economy, and which is why I think initiatives like this needs to happen more at a government level, where you have a lot of expertise in this country, you have industry chambers, you have scientific institutions, but we seldom see all of them getting together at the behest of, say, a government where you can work out a Vision 2040, like Abdul Kalam's 2020 vision. We're already in 2020, I never imagined that. So in that context, we need to view where we're going, and I think until and unless more of your names begin to come up there, like I think that's the endeavor of all panelists that they've been trying to do, you need to figure out why you're learning something, and you need to find joy in learning. I think only then will we be able to innovate, and then everything else will fall in place. Thanks, it's lunchtime.
On behalf of BCIC, may I request Mr. T.R. Parashuraman, Senior Vice President, to hand over a plan to Mr. Chief.
On behalf of St. Francis College, we invite Ms. Samira Fernandez to hand over a token of appreciation. We request Mr. T.R. Parashuraman, Senior Vice President, BCIC, and whole-time Director, Toyota Industries Engine India Limited, to sum up the entire proceedings of the morning session.
Namaskara. Chennai. Dear friends, as rightly said by Mr. Chetan, I don't want to take much of your time before the lunch. But first of all, I would like to summarize. Before that, great campus and a beautiful environment. Hats off to this college. I have a feeling that I am in Berkeley or in Stanford. I think that kind of an ambience your college was able to create today. And hats off to the management and Samira Fernandez, great job. And my good friend, Brother Simon, I think, and the management of this college. Today we had a wonderful overview by our President Devesh ji. And we had a wonderful session by Mr. Murali Mohan on the COVID-19. I think he touched upon some of the very intrinsic factors, some of the myth about this virus, do's and don'ts, and the intensity itself is not alarming. I think our Prime Minister yesterday tweeted, we should say no to panic and yes to caution. I think that a key summary he brought in very nicely today. And we had the first panel discussion on innovation and partnership towards corporate growth, driving the strategy. Very innovative session where all the leaders focused on key things. They talked about people, they talked about collaborative partnership, they talked about innovation, they touched upon the governance factors, the guiding principles, also talked about adoption. I think all these things are very important to be a very sound, successful partnership. Many partnerships have failed because of very simple reasons. And Shekhar also talked about partnership is lasting because of three reasons. One is how adaptable you become, then how you trust the partner, then how you work together. I think that's very important. And Devish talked about innovation and creativity. I think it's very important, without which a partnership cannot flourish. And I think Augustine talked about the skill development. I think like nothing happening without a skill. Therefore, he rightly said how we should leverage our skills very quickly to cope up with the kind of a growth that's going to happen. And the second session, of course, Mr. Badri talked about the kind of key challenges in terms of governance and adoption. So all the kind of panelists talked about the key factors driving the partnership and growth. And the second session we had on the kind of, what to say, the futuristic leadership. I think there is no single answer. But I think the most important thing is to have the right people. I think Swami Vivekananda, I recollect the words of Swami Vivekananda. He said, you give me one person who is pure, I will change this world. I think who is that person? I think the change has to start from within. I recollect the quote of Dr. Abdul Kalam. He said, where there is virtuousness in our heart, where there is virtuousness in our heart, there is beauty in our character. Where there is beauty in our character, there is order in the nation. Where there is order in the nation, there is peace in the world. Therefore, the change has to start from within. I think who has to change this world? I think we. I have to initiate the change. I think as students, my strong request is, please don't wait for the other person. You be the change agent and you lead the change. Then the rest will become history. So please, let us foster the change. And one more important takeaway. Today many people touched upon this topic, the Johari window. The first quadrant says, I know that I know. That is self-confidence. Second quadrant, I know that I don't know. That is latent talent. Third quadrant, I don't know that I know. Sorry, second quadrant, I know that I don't know is humility. Third quadrant is I don't know that I know. I know that I don't know is latent talent. And fourth quadrant, I don't know that I don't know. That is ignorance. So ladies and gentlemen, please understand 99% of the time, I think we are sailing the face of ignorance. We think that we know. The fact is we don't know that we don't know. Once you open the door with an open mind, I think the whole world is in front of us. Therefore, sky is not the limit. Once creativity and innovation with an open mind follows, I think the rest is a history. And rightly said by the earlier speakers, not just the dream alone is sufficient. We need to have a strong foundation, back to basics. We should have incremental steps. I think this was told by Mr. Ramesh Saligramu. I think he said the very important small steps is very important. Therefore, innovation, creativity, vision, backed up by a firm action, together with right people, would take our nation, our world to a new destiny. And thank you very much for giving us this opportunity on behalf of the Bengaluru Chamber of Industry and Commerce. I thank Francis College, and especially Samira. I think she has been an excellent leader in our Bangalore chambers. She is co-chairing our brand BCIC. So I thank Samira for wonderful arrangements, and let us make it a kind of reviewing event, and let us meet in frequent intervals to take it forward. Thank you so much. God bless.
I also call upon a very special person who has been a backbone for the entire program, without whom it would not have been a success. Mr. Prithvi, Secretary General Designate of the Bengaluru Chamber of Industry and Commerce, may I request our Principal, Dr. Subbarao, to do the honors.
We also have with us a few other special guests who are with us today. May I call upon Ms. Richa Sarna, who is the co-chair of the BCIC ICT Committee. May we request Brother Simon to kindly do the honors. We also have with us Mr. Rizwan Asad from Nasiman TV, a well-known station. Thank you for being with us today. He will be also doing an exclusive coverage of the entire event. So thank you, sir, for your time and for being with us. Please have a seat.
Now, I request Reverend Brother Simon, the Provincial and Director of St. Francis Institutions, to deliver the vote of thanks.
All our distinguished guests of the day, all our beloved staff, and my dear students. Today, St. Francis is extremely happy to see and happy to have all our important guests of the day. I'm not naming any one of you, all are very important for St. Francis. Very important for St. Francis. Today, exactly what we want. You know, you have listened to the panel discussions and all the proceedings that we had. I want to point out only one thing. What they told, you know, they told education is essential, but skill is absolute. Did you listen that they told? And one more thing they told. Innovation will die off if you are not ready to adapt yourself. These are the two things that are essential for our existence in St. Francis, because we stand for that. That is what the St. Francis is looking for. Just we are not looking for the just education as everywhere we have, but make you skillful to adapt yourself for the changing world. And for that, all our distinguished guests are here to make you skillful, to make you to change. And that's what we are looking for. And that is what all our industrial friends are there, our relationship with them. And these changes will take place only the innovative way of thinking. And St. Francis, when we started, we thought something different. We should give them education, we should give them skill. And that is an innovative way of thinking in the field of education. And very challenge that we face is that will our students will be able to understand that changes that we are looking for, and they are ready to adapt themselves. And that is what we were looking, and all our panel discussions, so every moment we tell students, you have to change yourself. Even there, the second panel discussion, they are thinking that go to Mars to get job. You not listen to that one? And they say it is not impossible, it is possible.
And that is why only one thing we had to think, we had to adopt. And only these ideas, we all of us are here today. And St. Francis is happy to have all of you. And you will see the difference. My dear students, you are really, really privileged today. Not because of this infrastructure. You are really privileged today. All these dignitaries are here and you are going to meet them after some time today itself. And you will have a personal interaction. How many colleges will have that, the students have that privilege to meet these dignitaries? And you are going to visit their companies later on to make skillful, to make adapt yourself. And supporting all our students, supporting this great institution, your presence is inevitable. We acknowledge your presence on behalf of the management, on behalf of the staff, on behalf of the students, and my own personal behalf. I thank all of you to come over here and spending your precious time with our students and the management. Thank you. All what happened today, just because of our committed and our dedicated staff. Thank you. There is no word to say. Thank you, my dear staff. Thank you. And best audience, our students. Thank you, dear students. You are very good. That is what all the dignitaries are feeling. That change we can see in the life of your students. I'm very happy to hear. The greatest gift that a management or principal or a director can hear is that your students are good. I'm happy. Now, on behalf of I thank all of you. Now we will conclude the program and you will be going to your respective classes where you are allotted and the panels will come and meet you. Please interact with them and tell them we are ready to change. We are ready to change. We are ready to adapt the changes that is going to face. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Simon. From the student fraternity, we have a small request for the guests and dignitaries to kindly address the students in small groups in our dedicated classrooms for which we have facilitated the same. We now request one and all to kindly rise for the national Please keep standing as the dignitaries leave the hall.